Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I am so glad you joined me on this beautiful Friday morning. As you know, I am Deb Burton, Executive Director of RI Elder Info. And every Friday for more than the last 6 years, I have been bringing you Friday Friends, where I speak to individuals that are sharing information that you or someone you know needs to know about. And today we're having a great conversation about long-term care. How do you find it? Where do you look for it? How does it get paid for? That I feel like so many people really need this information right now. So please help us get the word out. Hit the like button, the share button, the bells, the whistles, all those social media cues that are like, hey, this is the information that we were just talking about and you said you needed. Share this out with everybody. Now, as you all know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we could not bring you Friday Friends for the last 6+ years without the support of our sponsors. So a huge thank you to Point 32 Health Foundation, United Healthcare, and especially McCarthy Law. Here's a message from McCarthy Law.
Here at McCarthy Law, we practice in the areas of estate planning, long-term care planning, elder care law, and residential real estate. Our focus is really on providing peace of mind to our clients.
If you're interested in scheduling a consultation with our office, you can feel free to reach out to us at 401-541-5540. You can also reach out via website at www.mccarthylawri.com. You also should check out our social media, both on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for some helpful tips and tricks.
Welcome, Susan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Deb?
Very good. I'm so glad you were able to join me today. So can you share with everybody who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I am Susan Franti DeMeo. I'm a licensed social worker who is an elder care coordinator at McCarthy Law. There's 2 elder care coordinators here, and we help support families and our clients in navigating resources and finding the appropriate levels of care for family members and just navigating healthcare and resources in general, which can be very complex.
It sounds really involved. And I noticed you said navigating the different levels of care. What does that mean?
So that means, we assist families across the whole continuum. So a lot of families are home living with their spouse or their families. And as you age, their needs change, right? So sometimes we can help support putting resources in place at home, whether it's home care or attending a senior center or adult day center or any other specific referrals they might need. But then sometimes an elder may need rehab or physical rehab, or they might even need a higher level of care, which could be assisted living or memory care or a long-term care in a nursing home.
Okay. And so there's home care, the adult day health you mentioned, assisted living, memory care, assisted living, nursing home, memory care unit on a nursing home.
That's right.
How do you help people really kind of untangle that knot to know which is the right direction to go for level of care and what is the right place?
That's right. It's a lot of information, a lot of options, a lot of decisions to be made. So it can be very challenging, but we help by meeting, the clients and their families and assessing their needs, coordinating with their outpatient providers, very oftentimes coordinating with the hospital or a rehab if that's where they currently are, and what their long-term needs are going to be, physical needs, emotional needs, cognitive needs, to determine the best level of care for them. Sometimes someone can be home doing very well, but then maybe sustain a fall. So then they're at a nursing facility for rehab. Well, where do you go from there? Are they safe to return home with support, or will they need continued nursing care, or maybe they could be in assisted living care? Oh, I can't. Sorry, Deb, I can't hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me now? It's so funny because they're doing some landscaping right outside my window. So folks might hear the lawnmowers and weed whackers going, good morning to everyone.
Right.
So if somebody, is recognizing that their loved one needs help, or maybe it's themselves, if they reach out to you, you can help them kind of figure out what level of care. How do you know of the different levels of a care, the different adult day health programs or the memory care, regular assisted living? How do you know how to pick?
Yep. So that can be really difficult too, because there's just so many. We certainly work with community partners and are aware of updated resources. So we can share that information with families. Sometimes we start, the level of care is the first thing you need to know, so you can kind of dwindle down the list that way. The location is usually very important to clients and families, so it's close to where everybody else lives. The cost can be a huge factor.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yep. So those are kind of the level of care and if it's a right fit. Because, everyone is a little bit different. So we usually, start with a smaller list to provide to the family and then let them tour, meet with some of the people at the facilities so that they can get a better fit. Usually we try to recommend, 3 to 5 of those so they're not so overwhelmed. But the big things usually are the appropriate level of care that they have, maybe options at that facility if they were to need a higher level of care. So that's important to some people. They don't want to have to move again. So you would want to pick a place that has, potentially assisted living, but then also they have an option there for memory care if that were to be a foreseen need in the near future. But those are the big areas, the appropriate level of care that they're going to have, a safe environment, have all of their needs met, and then the location and the cost are big ones.
Yeah, the cost especially, because I think, a lot of folks don't realize until they're in a crisis that Medicare does not cover long-term care. And when we're talking about long-term care, I think a lot of times people default the term long-term care to nursing home care.
Yes.
But isn't long-term care more encompassing than just nursing homes?
Yes, much more encompassing, like everything we're talking about, all those levels of care for long-term care planning. And it is really unfortunate that I've worked with so many clients and families who were under the impression some kind of insurance would pay. And that is often something that, like you said, you figure out in some kind of time of crisis, which, we really try to encourage people to be proactive in their long-term care planning so we can assist them along the way and be planful. But that's not always the case. So people can reach out to us in that crisis time to help support them navigate that. Because it's hard for families, there's the emotional aspect of things, the financial stress of things. And they want to be, a spouse or son or daughter and have a relationship and not have to make all these decisions. And it can be very stressful and overwhelming. But yes, long-term care can be all of those things. And the insurance piece that sometimes people get confused is when you go to rehab from a hospital for physical rehab, insurance pays for a period of time for the rehab. But if you were to transition into long-term care, as you said, it does not.
Right. And I think sometimes it gets really challenging for families to understand, because when you're working in the healthcare and the aging space, we recognize the differences in the terms of, rehab versus long-term care. So if you do have, we'll say the standard, I've fallen, broken my hip, and you need the hip replaced. So now you're admitted to the hospital for at least 3 midnights, head in the bed admitted. And then you can go for rehab and Medicare will cover it. But then maybe you don't do so well in the rehab and now you need to stay. And it's not that necessarily the rehab facility is not the same place as long-term care facility, because it really could be the rehab could be one unit of a nursing home or a rehab facility, of a long-term care facility, right?
Right. That's right. So a lot of most, I believe, of the nursing homes do have, a unit or more than a unit for rehab, and then units for long-term care. So it can be hard to figure out where is going to be the best fit. And it also, like, if you're there for rehab and insurance is paying, families want to explore, well, what is the cost of that if we were to pay privately? Because that varies a bit from facility to facility.
Ballpark, what is the average monthly cost for a nursing home? Just not high, low, divide by 2, ballpark.
So I know usually we ask about the daily just as an easy comparison for families. Yeah. So I could do the math quick, but usually the daily it can go from $350 to $450, or even a little more than that, $350 to $500 a day.
Wow. So I think people don't realize, let me just grab my calculator real quick here. $450. And let's just say there's 30 days in the month. That's $13,500. If my loved one does need to stay in the facility and they do have some funds in their checking account, their bank account, maybe they have another car or an RV, are you able to work with the team at McCarthy Law to make sure that the assets are handled in the way that my loved one wants and still be able to get into the nursing home?
Absolutely. That's a big piece of what the attorneys here at McCarthy Law assist with, really looking into their income and assets and what they can afford to pay privately. A lot of folks may have heard the terms, spend down, and once some clients are eligible for the Medicaid waiver, a lot of the facilities take that. So that's an option for someone who doesn't have the funds to pay privately, or eventually they know they're going to run out of those funds if they do have some assets. So there is that option. The Medicaid waiver is something that the facilities accept. And that is definitely something this firm assists with, navigating that whole process.
And part of what you do, correct me if I'm wrong, is if there is that situation where somebody, has the broken hip, they go through the hospital, they go to rehab, and now they need to stay in a long-term care facility, part of your role is to know which facilities would have a bed available. Mm-hmm. If the money runs out, that's mm-hmm. part of what you bring to the table when you're helping families, right?
Yes. Yeah, the reality of the situation, and we help kind of give them what the options are, but we'll be in touch with the client, the family, the current facility, and then prospective facilities, and help coordinate that transition for sure. That's a big piece of what the elder care coordinators do. And that is a time of high stress and worry for a lot of clients and families.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that a lot of times I talk to families who really feel like they should just magically know all of the ins and outs of this. And they don't realize that healthcare, as much as it's warm and fuzzy, it's also a business. Mm-hmm. And there are individuals like yourself that can they have in-depth knowledge of how the business works. Mm-hmm. And families shouldn't feel guilty or feel bad or insecure about reaching out for that help. I mean, if you won the lottery, would you feel bad talking to an accountant?
Right. That's a good way to look at it. And that's so true. They really, unless they've dealt with it, how would they know? It's not generally something that's talked about. Maybe some primary care physicians mention it, but that's not likely. So unless they've been through it, or you're in the field, you really don't know. And so how would they? I mean, we're in the field and we still come across new things every day, and things change and regulations change, and there's so many changes to keep up with. So it is nice that there are options for families like us that can support them through that and be up to date with what the options are, what the resources are available, and support them not only with navigating it, but also like an emotional support, talking them through that, because it's a really emotional, overwhelming time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, can never discount the caregivers who are really struggling with reaching out to ask for help, because I know that that's hard.
Yes.
So like I'm glad that you're able to help with that navigation piece. How about if individuals, and there are quite a few here in Rhode Island, if they're aging alone, maybe they've survived their family members, their friends are, about the same age, so really can't be depended on to provide a lot of help. Are you able to support individuals living at home alone with nobody out there and be that other sounding board for them?
Absolutely. In fact, it's nice to have families come because you can support them, and being a caregiver is probably the hardest thing someone can go through. But someone who's living alone, I would encourage them to reach out so that they do have a support system and that they are aware of the resources. There's so many things now that can be put in place to keep people at home as long as possible, if that is what their goal is. So yes, absolutely. Even if they live alone without a family representative, we can support them and help them as well in the same way.
And those folks that are in the gray area where, yeah, I live in Rhode Island, I'm doing okay. But I've named, my son in Wyoming and my daughter in Oklahoma. One's my healthcare power of attorney, one is my financial power of attorney, and I've done all that, and I've written out the will. But if I'm having chest pain and get transported to the hospital, the flight from Wyoming and Oklahoma is not going to be, a short amount of time to get to me.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to do that kind of emergency response where you would be able to have that conversation with like the hospital admission and say, oh yeah, Deb's daughter is healthcare power of attorney, Deb's son is her financial power of attorney, they're on their way,
Mm-hmm.
and here's the documents? Are you able to provide that service?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. We can be that voice. And very often we coordinate with hospitals in an emergency and connect them with the appropriate people. If they're out of state, that's common to have family members that live out of state. So it is reassuring for the client and families to know that we're here and that we can be that voice for them until somebody can get here if they're traveling, or if they don't have someone to come represent them. And part of what the firm does, working together with the attorneys and the elder care coordinators, is coming up with that life care plan. So we know what their wishes are and who they would want contacted, what they want to happen if they're hospitalized, and what all of their own goals and wishes are should that occur.
Yeah, that's really important. That's really good. I spoke with someone just the other day who was concerned because her choice was to execute a do not resuscitate order, alert, oriented, healthy, but she was feeling unwell and was hesitant to call for help, that people wouldn't know that she has a DNR. And if rescue were to arrive and she was in need of life support or not, that the wrong choice would be made. So, knowing that you're there and you can speak for someone who maybe can't speak for themselves, I feel like that's a great reassurance.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure their wishes are relayed. That's so important. And I'm sure that was scary for her.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And you're able to still visit clients even if they do go into long-term care facilities. Like you can still go in and be their advocate, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very frequently are we in the nursing facilities, assisted livings, hospitals, visiting with clients. Lots of times, like the common example you and I keep using, someone falls and they have to go to rehab. So that's a key time to be meeting because there's been such a quick change.
Yep.
So we often get involved at that point to figure out the next steps and help them through that. But yes, very commonly we can meet in homes. They can come in the office. We can go to assisted livings. We can go to nursing facilities. The other elder care coordinator, Elizabeth, and myself do that pretty much every day.
As we're approaching the holiday season, a lot of times the families fly in from out of state, visit Thanksgiving, all the different holidays that are coming up. If folks have questions about your services, how can they reach you?
So I think the number is running below. There's a main number, the 401-541-5540. Is that the one you have up there? They can call the main number and be connected to an intake specialist that can kind of ask them questions and guide them. Some people call and they're like, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. And there's so many different things. We can assist with power of attorneys, getting that established. So say there's a person who wants to seek our services and their family member lives out of state, but they want that person to be their power of attorney. That's something that we can assist with. So it can go all across the gamut, wills, trusts, but it's hard to know, right? If you're just calling, but the intake specialist can walk them through that and kind of ask them about what they're looking for and how we can best help them.
That is awesome. Awesome. And I have a final question, and I have not brought this up because I want to see your thoughts. As you're speaking with families or clients, what would be 3 things that you wish that they knew ahead of time?
I think reaching out, like I mentioned earlier, reaching out before the crisis, and many do, which is great. And sometimes you hear that stems from some other experience that they may have had, or a family member or a friend, and it was a negative experience. So they learned maybe we should reach out and get this all established. So many times people do that. And I would really strongly encourage getting all of that aligned so that you're prepared and reassured that everyone is going to follow your wishes. So I think that would be the big one, is to reaching out ahead of time. 2 is just to reach out, even if you feel like maybe I should have done this, 3 years ago. No time like now. Do it now. Get that support, express your wishes, and there'll always be someone that can help navigate. Even if you decide not to do XYZ, there's going to be something we can point you in the right direction. We have acquired many, many, many resources that can help people in the community. And I would encourage them to call even for that.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And just to be communicate with your family and with your providers.
I love that. Those are great 3 things. Absolutely. Especially communicate. Let people know who you've already decided is the one responsible for making decisions. Because then you don't get the, you're, in the hospital and the kids are like, well, mom named you as healthcare power of attorney and you're the financial power of attorney, and mom liked you best, and mom got you the best GI Joes. And
yeah, it can get very complicated in that time for people. So it's nice to get that all laid out, everybody's thoughts, everybody on the same page before it really needs to come to the table.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad in your busy schedule that you had time to come in and have this conversation, because it's really important. I feel like there's so much more that we could just keep talking about. I hope you'll be able to come on in one of the future episodes.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Everybody, long-term care is really a continuum of care from, getting what you need at home to different resources that are available in the community to the different types of long-term care facilities. And no one is born knowing these things, and you don't need to struggle. Please feel free to reach out to Susan. She is a wonderful resource. She has lots of contacts in the community, and she can help you and your family figure these things out, because these things are business and health, as well as the high pressure of family dynamics. Hit the easy button. Give her a call and get the care that you want and need in the way that you want and need it. It's so important to have these conversations. So, everybody, I am so glad that you were able to join today for this conversation. I hope that you've hit the like, the share, all those bells and whistles. And in the meantime, I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Please be well and be kind.